Hey, welcome back. Grab your coffee because today we're talking about something that sounds incredibly simple, vitamin B12. Maybe you're taking it right now, maybe it's in your multivitamin, or maybe you've been told you need a methylated B complex because you have an MTHFR gene variant. You flip over the bottle, you see names like methylcobalamin, cyanocobalamin, hydroxocobalamin, adenosylcobalamin, and you think, wait. It's all just B12, right? Well, not exactly. Today, I want to tell you about one of my favorite patients' stories. This is such a neat story because it completely changed the way I think about this vitamin. So I'm going to call her Anne. Anne was 52 and she was going through menopause. When she first came to see me, she was exhausted. She couldn't lose weight. She had brain fog. She just didn't feel like herself anymore. And she was already working with another doctor, taking a GLP injection medication, but something just wasn't adding up. The medication really wasn't giving her the results everyone always talks about. She was getting frustrated. So instead of asking, which weight loss medicine should we change? We asked a different question. Why wasn't her body responding? We were looking at all the connecting pictures of her body. As we dug deeper, we found an autoimmune thyroid disease known as Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroid disease. Her immune system was attacking her thyroid. Her gut needed rebuilding, and that takes months of that work, strategic development for that. So her inflammation was high. We didn't chase the weight. We focused on calming her body, getting the inflammation down, supporting her thyroid, healing her gut, reducing inflammation, and something really, I would say, really interesting happened. The same GLP she'd already been taking, guess what? It started working. Over the next 6 months, Anne lost 60 pounds. Her energy improved, her brain fog lifted, she felt like herself again, and honestly, we were both celebrating. She was coming in, telling me about all her cosmetic procedures she's ready to have because of her loose skin, and let me tell you, I was celebrating with her. Then I repeated her lab work, okay? One marker caught my attention, and it was something called the homocysteine. You may have heard of this, you may not have heard of this, but it was a little bit higher than I'd like it to see. And really what I like to look at homocysteine is because it can be associated with increased cardiovascular risk levels, and that's not good. They tell us how efficient the body is handling methylation and processing things in the liver. It's super important for liver health. So I made what I thought was a very reasonable adjustment. I increased her methylated B vitamins. Nothing dramatic, just a small change. We bumped it up from from 1 capsule to 2. So again, not a massive change. However, a month later, she came back into my office. She smiled. She sat down. She said, "Emily, I can't sleep now," in her lovely accent. No anxiety, no new stress. We walked through everything. No new hot flashes. Nothing was different except she could not fall asleep. So she told me she was shopping for a mattress. Her and her husband were shopping for a mattress because they were convinced it was the bed that was a problem. And I'm like, whoa. We got to look at the timeline of things. We started reviewing everything. Every supplement, every medication, every recent change, and every single thing that we did. I'm very detailed like that. The one thing we'd changed the month later was her methylated B vitamins. So we backed them down. Within just a few days, she was normally sleeping again with the same thyroid, the same hormones, the same mattress, the same life. The only thing that changed was that amount of that one vitamin. And that experience taught me something that I'll never forget. Every supplement has a job. And today's episode is about understanding the job of vitamin B12 because not all B12 is created equal. So let's get into it. Before we go any further, I want to make something very clear. Anne's story is not a story about methylated B vitamins being bad. They're not. In fact, I recommend them every single week in my practice. For many people, they're exactly the right choice. The problem wasn't the vitamin. The problem was that it was no longer the right dose for her body at that point in her journey. And that's a lesson I wish more people really just understood. We live in a world where supplements are often marketed as if they're always better, like higher doses, more potent, more bioavailability. But biology just doesn't work that way. A supplement isn't good or bad per se. It's a tool. Just like you wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw, you don't use every supplement for every person. Every supplement has a purpose and every supplement has a job. And your body decides whether that job is helpful or whether that job is simply just too much. And that's exactly what happened to Anne. So to understand why, we first have to talk about something called methylation. So if you've spent any time reading about functional medicine, you've probably heard the term methylation. Maybe you've also heard the term MTHFR gene. Social media has certainly made this popular. But really, what is methylation? And at its simplest, it's one of the thousands of chemical reactions that happens inside of your body every second. Your body uses methylation to make neurotransmitters, to repair DNA, to process hormones, to support detoxification, to regulate inflammation, to create healthy cells. It's involved in almost everything. One of the nutrients that helps those reactions is vitamin B12. Now, here is where things get interesting. Vitamin B12 isn't just one molecule. There are 4 different forms of this molecule, and each one has a slightly different job. Some require your body to convert before they become active. Some already are active. Some support energy production. Others support methylation cycle more specifically and more targeted, more directly. And understanding those differences helps explain exactly why Anne suddenly couldn't sleep. So before we get into each form, which I'm going to do with you, I want to tell you where much of my own understanding of methylation came from, because I think it's important to know where this information really originates. So before we dive into the different forms of B12, I want to explain early in my functional medicine training. I spent a lot of time studying methylation with Dr. Ben Lynch. You may know him as the founder of Seeking Health or the creator of Strategene Report. He spent years helping practitioners understand how genetics, methylation, histamine, detoxification, and nutrition all intercept. Now, I'm not telling you this because I want you to go buy a report. I'm telling you this because I want you to know it just isn't my opinion. This is an area that's been studied extensively by people who've devoted their careers to understanding these pathways, and there are hundreds of peer-reviewed journal articles published in those journals, So it's extensively studied. It is really backed up. It is not just something made up, okay? So over the years, I've seen these concepts play over and over again in real patients like Anne, and her story makes perfect sense. Once you understand the science, that's when things make sense. So, did you know that one of the most common forms of B12 actually contains a cyanide molecule? I know, that sounds terrifying. But don't worry, this isn't one of those internet fear-mongering moments. It's just chemistry. And understanding that chemistry helps explain why there are multiple forms of B12 in the first place. The form I'm talking about is, you ready for it? The most common form. Cyanocobalamin. Cyano. The name comes from literally the cyanide group that's attached to the B12 molecule. Now, before you panic, the amount of cyanide is actually extremely tiny. It's not a toxic dose. Your body is perfectly capable of removing it, but your body still has work to do. It still has to remove it. Before cyanocobalamin can actually be used, your body has to remove that cyanide group and then convert the vitamin into one of the few active forms, either methylcobalamin or adenosylcobalamin. Think of cyanocobalamin like buying furniture from IKEA. You absolutely end up with a useful piece of furniture. You just have to assemble it first. In the active forms, those come with the most of the assembly already done for them. Now, that doesn't automatically make cyanocobalamin bad. In fact, there's reason manufacturers really love it, and it's incredibly stable. It's inexpensive, has a long shelf life, which is why you'll find it in so many multivitamins and fortified foods and cheap products out there. It's really practical. It's not necessarily because it's the form your body prefers, but it's because it's the form manufacturers prefer. That brings us to another question. Why is it called cobalamin in the first place? And why is every B12 injection that beautiful ruby red color? Well, I have my answer for you. I've always wondered that, but I've researched it for you. You're welcome. Here's coming. If you've ever seen a B12 injection, you've probably noticed something, or maybe even a sublingual that you put in your mouth or a liquid. It's bright red, almost ruby red, that color. And it's not food coloring, and it's not a dye that gets put in the B12. That is B12 itself. It's vitamin B12 itself. The reason why it's red is because right in the middle of every B12 molecule is a cobalt atom. That cobalt gives B12 its beautiful deep red color. In fact, that's where the name cobalamin comes from. Cobalt. Plus, amin, A-M-I-N. The vitamin was literally named after the metal sitting at its center. Now, here's my favorite part of the story. The word cobalt actually comes from a German word, kobold, K-O-B-O-L-D, kobold, which means globin. Centuries ago, German miners were digging for silver. Instead, they kept finding this strange blue-gray one, this gray ore, it was called, and it looked very valuable, but every time they tried to melt it down, it released poisonous fumes. They had no idea why. So they blamed goblins, like monsters, okay? Goblins. They believed these little underground spirits had stolen the silver and left behind a cursed rock instead. So hundreds of years later, scientists discovered that cursed rock contained cobalt. And eventually they found that same metal sitting at the center of one of the most important vitamins in the human body. I just love that. It's the same metal people once blamed on goblins and monsters. It's quietly helping your nervous system function, making healthy red blood cells and supporting your brain right now as you're listening to this podcast. So now that we know what B12 is, let's talk about the 4 different forms of this cobalt, okay? Because this is where Anne's story starts to make a lot of sense. So let's answer the question. If they're called B12, what are the forms? Well, because they each have a different job. And like hiring the wrong person for a job, using the wrong form or even the right form at the wrong dose can create problems. So let's meet them. Picture this. You're running through Target after work. You need shampoo, dog food, toothpaste, and you're almost out of your multivitamin. So you swing by the vitamin aisle and you grab the bottle that says complete multivitamin. You throw it in the cart and you keep moving. You probably never turned it over. You didn't read the ingredients list. You just wanted something with B12 in it because you needed it. That's cyanocobalamin. It's in the majority of multivitamins because it's inexpensive, it's stable, it sits on the shelf really, really well. For many perfectly healthy people, it's fine-ish. I'd say ish. Your body simply converts it into another active form before using it. It's just the form manufacturers most commonly choose. Okay. Now picture someone else. She listens to healthy podcasts. She reads books. She orders genetic testing. She found out she has MTHFR variant. Joined a few Facebook groups. Started researching methylation. Everyone kept saying, you need methylated B vitamins. So she bought a methylated B vitamin called methylcobalamin. Maybe that person is you. For many people, this form works beautifully. It doesn't need much conversion. It's already active. It directly supports the methylation cycle. But remember, Anne, this is the form she wasn't taking, not because it was wrong, because after her labs came back, I intentionally increased it. I bumped it up. Her homocysteine suggested she might benefit from additional methylation support. So that decision made sense. But biology wasn't static, and sometimes your body says, okay, that's enough. Anne wasn't anxious. She wasn't having panic attacks. She wasn't under more stress. She just couldn't sleep. And once we reduced her methylated B vitamins, her sleep got better. She didn't need a new mattress. She just needed to go back into time and rewind time and undo something that was done specifically for her. She needed a different dose, and that was the clue. So now let's meet a different person. She's exhausted. She's not sleepy. She wakes up tired. She barely touches coffee because it barely helps her. She's just exhausted all the time. She feels like every cell in her body has a dead battery. That's because adenosylcobalamin, item number 3, has a completely different job. Instead of primarily supporting methylation, this form works inside of your mitochondria. This is called adenosylcobalamin. Okay. Your mitochondria are the tiny powerhouse plants, the power plants that, just like the factories inside every cell. They produce energy, and adenosylcobalamin helps support that process. So if methylation is helping one department, adenosylcobalamin is helping another. It's the same vitamin, different assignment. The last form might be my favorite. Picture someone whose labs show a true B12 deficiency. Maybe she's had years of acid reflux medication. Maybe she's had bariatric surgery, maybe pernicious anemia, or simply just doesn't absorb nutrients very well anymore. She's not looking to optimize. She's looking to replace something that's really just missing. That's called hydroxocobalamin, and it has a long track record. It is very well tolerated. It stays in the body longer, and the body can convert it into whatever active form it needs. Think of it like giving your body raw ingredients. Instead of a finished product, you're giving it all the raw ingredients it needs. Here's another interesting fact about hydroxocobalamin. It's actually used in emergency medicine. Get this, to treat cyanide poisoning. The very same vitamin used to correct B12 deficiency can also save someone's life after cyanide exposure. Is that an oxymoron? Is that karma? I don't know, but that is really interesting. It's incredible. So people often group hydroxocobalamin and adenosylcobalamin together because they're both considered non-methylated, and that is true. However, they are both quite different. Hydroxocobalamin is more like a reserve player. Your body can convert it whatever active form it needs. Adenosylcobalamin is already suited for its role. It's working directly in mitochondrial energy production. One gives your body flexibility, the other goes straight to work. Neither is better, it's just different, okay? So what I want to tell you is something that may surprise you. When researchers have compared these 4 forms for correcting an actual B12 deficiency, they really haven't found strong evidence that one is universally superior for everyone. That's important because the internet loves declaring winners. This is the best form. Never take that one. Everyone with MTHFR needs this form. No, science is rarely that simple. And Anne didn't have trouble because methylcobalamin is a bad vitamin. She had trouble because for her, at that dose, at that point in her health journey, it became too much. It overflowed. That's individualized medicine. And it's not about finding the best supplement. It's about finding the right tool for the right person at the right time. So now that we've talked about the 4 forms, let's answer another question I get all the time. If these forms are so different, which ones are actually found in food? Because nature has been answering that question long before supplement companies ever existed. Here's a question that we're going to dig into. Because we're looking at B12, researchers have actually looked at this, and what they find is absolutely fascinating. Different animal foods naturally contain different forms of B12. So think beef, lamb, venison. These foods tend to contain more adenosylcobalamin and hydroxocobalamin. That's meat. The forms your body has been working with for thousands of years, adenosylcobalamin and hydroxocobalamin. Dairy and eggs. We got milk, cheese, yogurt, egg yolks. These contain proportionally more methylcobalamin. Nature isn't giving us just one form. It's giving us a mixture. So we got different foods in different forms of B vitamins, all working together. So here's the interesting part. Cyanocobalamin, the form found in most multivitamins, it barely exists in nature. It's largely a manufacturing choice because it's inexpensive, it's stable, it's easy to produce. Not because it's the form your steak, your salmon, your eggs naturally provide. So think about dinner tonight. If you had salmon, steak, or some yogurt or eggs, Your body received a variety of naturally occurring B12 forms, exactly the way humans have eaten them for generations. And I think that is an important perspective. Nature has always favored diversity. It really has. So let's go back to Anne, because honestly, she taught me something. Many things, actually. When she came back and told me she couldn't sleep, my first thought wasn't, well, that's strange. My first thought was, well, something changed. Our bodies don't usually create brand new symptoms for no reason. Symptoms are information. They're clues. Sometimes they're telling us something is missing. Sometimes they're telling us something is too much. In Anne's case, it wasn't her thyroid. It wasn't menopause. It wasn't her mattress. It wasn't stress. It was simply that her body was telling us this dose is no longer the right fit. So we listened, we adjusted, we helped her sleep. Her sleep returned. And honestly, that is functional medicine. It's not memorizing protocols. It's not giving everyone with MTHFR variant the same exact supplement, the same protocol. It's not chasing lab numbers and just isolation. We're looking at the whole story. We're listening to the picture. Or listening to the picture, we're listening to the whole piece. We're looking for patterns. We're asking why, and remembering that every patient is different. That's why I always tell my patients every supplement has a job. The goal isn't to take more supplements. It's to make sure every supplement you're taking still has a reason for being there. So let's bring everything together. B12 isn't just one vitamin. It's 4 different forms, each with different purpose. We got cyanocobalamin, stable, affordable, requires conversion before your body even uses it. We got methylcobalamin, already active, wonderful for many people, but not always the right dose or the right fit for every person. We got adenosylcobalamin, the quiet worker inside your mitochondria, helping produce energy. And hydroxocobalamin, the flexible form, excellent for correcting deficiency, even used as an antidote for cyanide poisoning. None of them are good. None of them are bad. They're just different tools. And like any tool, the right one depends on the job. So if today's episode taught you anything, I hope it's this. If you've ever started a supplement, any supplement, and suddenly developed a symptom, something new, something different, don't ignore it. Rewind time. Go back. It doesn't automatically mean the supplement is harmful, but it also doesn't mean you should simply just push through it. We got to listen. Your body may be trying to tell you something because your symptoms are data. If today's conversation made you curious about the supplements sitting in your own cabinet, you're going to love what's coming next. I'm releasing a 3-part series, free, called The Supplement Audit, the 15-minute supplement audit. And together we'll walk through how to evaluate what you're taking, why you're taking, and whether each supplement still has a job to do. Because sometimes the biggest breakthroughs don't come from adding something new. They come from understanding what you're already taking. So, thanks so much for spending time with me today. If you find this episode helpful, do me a favor, share it with someone who says, I take B12, but I have no idea which one, because I promise they're not alone. Until next time, I'm Dr. Emily Wheeler, and remember, your body is talking. Let's keep listening.